going back to my original question, no crunches, you're going to make it worse. A couple crunches is not going to make your diastasis worse. It's not going to, widen the gap. However, my question to you is, over time, prolonged crunches or prolonged exercises that might not be right for somebody, maybe they're not doing crunches properly, maybe they're not doing the planks properly and they haven't learned how to engage their abdominal wall. Is that an exercise, or is that going to be something that could make it worse?
Yeah, so I think it's very helpful to have some parameters to know when is an exercise maybe pushing the limit too far for someone,
Mm-hmm.
where if they continue to do that over and over and over, and kind of ignore some of the signs that maybe their body is telling them, if they continue to do that, then potentially it could lead to some reaction, whether it means there's a further widening of the linea alba, or some issues like pelvic related issues, incontinence, prolapse. So yes, I think it's very helpful to have parameters.
Mm-hmm.
What I would say is, for the most part, exercises, generally speaking, are not okay. So usually, what we're looking at when we're talking about safety, it's about pressure management,
Mm-hmm.
the amount of pressure that is being produced and how well your body is handling that pressure. And so it's not always about, let's do exercises that don't produce a lot of pressure. Because really, when we look at what you're doing with exercises and what we usually do during the day, the amount of pressure that we produce during these very controlled exercises, where we're in that moment, we're usually very mindful of what we're doing, very tuned in,
Mm-hmm.
compared to what we do in the day, where we're just kind of on the go and sometimes mindlessly just doing whatever we need to do.
Right.
We often have much higher levels of pressure in our cores when we're doing that. So just knowing that kind of takes down the fear about, okay, this exercise is probably producing too much pressure. Therefore, so if we go down that train of thought, what we'll often hear is that there's too much pressure in my core. So my core, I'm actually straining my core, so I'm going to make things worse. So, and it's because of the pressure. So it's not so much about how much pressure you produce in your core. It's usually about how you're managing it. So again, let's go back to some of those parameters.
Right.
If you are doing an exercise, let's say a plank, for example, going back to the two that you mentioned, the crunch and the plank. So if we go back to the plank example and someone is trying to do a full plank, they're parallel to the ground, unmodified plank. And maybe it's their first time doing it since giving birth, or maybe they've just been holding off on doing it for a while, because they were worried about it, but they haven't really done too many other exercises, and they're just going to jump right in and do this one. Now, there are some scenarios that could happen. They could go down into a plank, and they might be able to do the plank just fine, meaning they're feeling what's happening in their body. They feel like they've got control over their body. And in terms of their core, they feel like they're able to keep things contained. They're able to draw in their abdomen and kind of hold it inside of the plank.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe if they slide a mirror underneath them, they'll be able to see what the core is doing too. And they're able to see that, okay, for the most part, things are kept inward, and they have control over that. There may be a moment where they're breathing and they're inhaling and things kind of let go, but they see it and they're able to self-correct right in that moment and kind of re-engage, and everything comes back in. So in that example, the person clearly demonstrated an ability to do the exercise and was not limited by the diastasis. They
Mm-hmm.
were able to do it, they were able to have control over it. And so again, it's not so much about the exercise itself, but usually about how you're doing the exercise. And so the parameter there is, do you have the ability to control what you're doing? Is there so much pressure for your body to handle? Is it too much for your body to handle? Meaning, do you feel like your abdomen is really being pushed out
Hmm.
to its end limit? That's the limit that we need to sort of be a little cautious around.
Right.
Is your abdomen being stretched out to that limit? And if so, do you have control in that moment to bring it down away from that fully stretched state? Or do you feel like it's still way too challenging of an exercise where even if you try to breathe differently, change your form, engage differently, it's still doing that? So in that case or in that scenario, I definitely wouldn't be recommending someone continue on at that level. I would scale back.
Right.
So if that person continued and did it and ignored all the signs, then we could potentially see some things happen down the line, maybe, maybe not, but it's sort of, that's where my parameter would be, is like
Right.
the stretched limit.
Right.
So going back to the crunch, which is a very different exercise, usually we don't see that kind of intense bulging. We may see a
Mhm.
little bit of movement of the abdomen when someone lifts their head up. So if we are doing a movement like that and we see a little bit of outwards sort of movement of the abdomen, and you feel the linea alba, there might be a little bit of doming, but it's very soft, like nothing's really taut and really being stretched and being pushed on from pressure underneath, then there, and of course, if you're assessing if they're leaking, if they have any pressure from,
Right.
like, let's say prolapse symptoms. So in that case, again, the exercise is actually quite beneficial because it's working on a very large muscle in the front of the abdomen that usually is very weak after pregnancy.
Right.
So the parameters are usually around, do you have pain? So I typically go through an acronym. And
Yes.
so it's, do you have pain anywhere in your body when you're doing something? We don't want to make any injury that you have worse, and we don't want to make any new injuries when you're starting an exercise
Right.
program. So any pain? Are you leaking? Whether it's incontinence or just a feeling like there's the possibility that you might have some leaking. So there's a sense of like, okay, I think I'm going to leak if I do this more.
Right.
So any leaking, any feelings of pressure inside of the pelvis, inside of the vagina, especially for those who have prolapse. Again, about core strategy. Do you feel like if you've been practicing working on your TA and your pelvic floor engagement, you've worked on coordinating it all, can you continue doing that inside of this exercise? Do you feel like you've got control over that? Like you're taking all those skills and now
Mhm.
you're using them inside of your strengthening. So do
Right.
you still feel like you can do all that stuff? Or is the exercise just way too hard for you to have control over those things? You
Right.
lose that control. So PLP and then core control. I have a whole
I
slide on
know.
this, and I actually, if you don't mind, I can actually just bring up the slide. Can I share a screen?
Sure. Yeah, you have a really good, I think it's a couple of Instagram posts, or maybe it's all in one, but I think you highlighted it really well in Instagram.
That's exactly what I'm gonna bring
Okay.
up right now for
All
you.
right.
Can you enable share screen?
Oh, let's see. I haven't used that function before.
I wonder if it's under,
You know what?
you want to just link it?
I'm definitely gonna link your website and your Instagram to the
Okay,
description box below. So you guys will be able to see that for sure. Um,
yeah.
but
So
I,
it's just a simple acronym. It's PLPCCDEF. So the other letters, just quickly, are, do you feel like you have control over your core, control over the core strategy? Do you feel like, for D, doming is do you see, it's not that if you have doming that you need to avoid the exercise, but if you have doming, is it excessive? Is it
Mhm.
so much that the tissues are being stretched out fully that, and so taut that when you go and you feel, it's actually very firm and hard under your fingers, compared to if you see a little bit of doming, which is actually very expected and normal. and you go and you feel your linea alba and it feels soft, that is not straining the tissues in any way. And then E is, does the exercise feel easy for you? And F is, do you feel like you've got control over your form
Mm-hmm.
for the whole duration of the exercise? Like you can do it your 10 repetitions or however many you're doing, and you have control over your body. So that's when it comes to how do I know if an exercise is right for me? How do I know if what I'm doing is too much? What am I looking for to help
Right.
me know if this is a good one for me? Well, that's where this acronym comes in really handy, because these are sort of my parameters.
Mm-hmm.
And usually when it comes to diastasis, like your question is, will I make things worse if I continue doing this? We want to respect that tissues have a limit where they are, when they're stretched, if they're fully stretched and we're doing that repetitively, then it could lead to further weakening and straining of the tissue. But
Right.
most of the time, that's not where we're at in terms of strengthening. We're usually a little like underneath that. So,
Right. Right. I love that you have this acronym because I know a lot of people, and in the past, all we thought was, okay, it was pressure. We just thought, okay, doming, bad, right? And now we know that it's not the case. And we talk about hard dome and soft dome. But I also like that you have included, rightly and rightfully so, the stuff about the pelvic floor, because I know a lot of clients come to us and they just think it's their core, like right in here, my midsection, right? They don't know yet that it's their pelvic floor as well. So I love that you have the acronym letters in there about, pressure on your pelvis, and you kind of, okay, walk through all these things. All right, now let's go on to the next one.
yeah.
What also for myself, I was somebody when I had diastasis after my son. It wasn't. I didn't have the doming. I didn't have the coning. I just had a big belly, like it was, So I really like that. It's not just about the dome right here down the middle. It's, do you have the excessive just pooch out, or as I call it, bread loafing, right? And all those things come to play. So I really like, you hit on a lot of topics here, right?
I know I kind of threw in a whole
My
whole
next question.
things, and so yeah, I apologize if that was all overwhelming. But
That's
if you go through the acronym, you'll see that it's actually quite simple.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I love that because, as you said before, doming isn't bad and it doesn't equal weakness. So I like that you're telling us what else we need to look for. Which leads me to just closing here. Can you tell us the free offer that you have for moms? And I believe it has something to do with these top things you might be doing if you're not progressing in your diastasis.
Yes, exactly. So it's the top 10 reasons why your diastasis may not be getting better and what to do about it.
Right.
And so it's a free guide where I go through some of the common roadblocks that people experience and some of the reasons why they hit a plateau. And what I can say is, for most of the people that I'm seeing, it's generally that they're not doing enough.
Hmm.
And there's a whole reason behind that. Of course, there's a lot of fear. They're not doing enough because they may be told not to do things, and so they're holding themselves back, or they just don't know how. They may not be exercisers, so
Right.
there's like they're not familiar with exercising.
Hmm.
But it seems like we're not doing enough, and so if we start adding more load, more exercising, more challenging exercises, then we can potentially start seeing those changes start to take place after that. So if
Right.
you're not seeing a lot of change, let's look at your exercise program. It's one piece of the whole puzzle,
Hmm.
but it is an important piece of that conservative management. So let's see if you're actually progressing yourself or if you're just doing heel slides and bridges and clamshells.
Right. Okay. And I'll put the link down in the description box so everybody can click and get that for free.
Perfect.
Can you tell us where to find you? I'm going to have your Instagram here, but tell us what courses you have to offer fitness professionals like myself, as well as moms.
Oh, okay, amazing. Yeah, so I definitely work with moms with diastasis, and I definitely do help professionals understand the condition and try to help them through it as well. So if you are a fitness or a rehab professional, I do have a full course on diastasis. I pretty much gives you kind of the A to Z about the condition. And a lot of the uncertainty around exercise and what you can do and what you shouldn't do, and there's a lot of that even within the professionals
Mhm.
themselves. So what my course does is it kind of debunks it all and gives you a lot of the research behind it and just explains it in a very simplistic way and gives you an example of how to do exercises with your clients, like a progression. So that way you kind of have it laid out for you, and you can take it from there, and you won't have as much fear and bring that to the table. You'll
Right.
bring more empowerment. And then if you are a mom that has diastasis and you're just kind of looking for ways to progress your core, that's what I created the program for moms. It's for that specific reason. Is I just didn't think people were going far enough. So I created a program that teaches them how to progress their exercises if they're kind of in that stuck doing the gentle contractions and coordinating and working on just posture, and there's more to it. So if
Right.
you're looking, what else can I do? That's what the program is for.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'll put that in the links down below. And Munira, can you share us your website so we know where to find you?
Sure. It's www.munirahudanipT.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much for helping us to distill that research and getting what is really going on and what we need to be continuing to do. So thank you so much for all you do for us, fitness professionals, as well as moms out there.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Bye.